consent agenda to remove that. We're not ready for council action on that tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve with that change.
I'll second.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary to approve the agenda with change. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Invocation, Faith Lutheran Church. Good evening.
Let us pray. Oh Lord our God, especially in this week of Thanksgiving, we are so very grateful for your steadfast and generous providence for us and for all your creatures. We pray that amidst the turmoil of this world, you would continually remind us that the earth is yours and all that is in it, so that we might have confidence and peace to address those things that we can and to trust you in those places that we cannot. We thank you for the gift of this city, for these leaders who've been elected or appointed. We pray that you will grant them wisdom and guidance, that you will also grant them your peace in the decisions they make, and that you will use all of this according to your good will to bless and provide and care for us and all your people. All these things, Lord, and whatever else you see that we need, I pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Recognitions of gifts, donations, and community service to the city. Does anybody have anything tonight? Chief Schulman, I heard you have something for us.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd just like to recognize Clayton Moore. He's a young student with Troop 623. He's working on an Eagle Scout project, and they started with his troop last night distributing flyers to, their goal is to hit every house that has a fire hydrant out in front of it, to alert them about keeping snow away from them and keeping them clear and accessible for us. So
I really like this guy.
I agree. So I just wanted to recognize him and his troop for, this is their project. They came to me and asked if it was okay if they could do it. And they're also going to have a little bit of an offshoot later with some storm drain stuff as well later in the year. So
Mary likes him.
You must be listening to council meetings
Yeah,
between
must
the
be.
mayor and Mary, huh?
Yeah.
So Clayton isn't an employee of mine, and he made no mention that he was going to be recognized tonight. He was just at work at 5. I could have drug him over here. I'll have to give him a hard time.
well, we can bring them back maybe when they're done with the project. We can bring them back for that.
That could be
Sounds
great.
perfect.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chief. We do have a resolution underneath there, resolution number 15377, accepting $1,250 donations from various donors for flagpole setup at the senior center.
I'd make a motion to accept that donation.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Pat to accept that donation. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Public comment, if anybody wants to address the council, please come forward, state your name and address. Alrighty, approval of minutes. We have a regular meeting minutes of November 9th, 2021, and a council workshop of November 9th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve both those meeting minutes.
Second.
Mary, second by Chad to approve the minutes. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Consent agenda, this will be done by one motion unless somebody pulls something off for discussion. A is approval of purchase of Bobcat skid loader for the Parks Department. B is approval to sell at auction a 1990 Chevrolet tanker truck. C is approval of resolution number 15373, resolution authorizing disposal of Park and Recreation Department surplus property. D is approval of resolution number 15374, resolution authorizing disposal of Creekside surplus property. E is approval of resolution number 15375, resolution establishing location for traffic control device, no parking on Shady Ridge Road Northwest. F is approval of resolution number 15376, resolution calling for a public hearing on the proposed revision of business subsidies goals for Hutchinson LLC. G is approval of resolution number 15378, resolution calling for a public hearing on the proposed adoption of modifications to the development program for the Development District Number 4 and establishing of a TIF District Number 4-22, a development district, that's the Jefferson Hotel. H is approval of amending to grant agreement with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development for Uponor job creation. And J is claims appropriations and contract payments. Is there anything anybody wants pulled off? Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There you go.
Okay. Motion by Pat, second by Mary to approve the consent agenda. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We'll jump down to communications, requests, petitions, review of the 2021 Pavement Management Program report. Mr. Olson.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Get switched over to the PC here. There we go. The presentation tonight is just a review of some of the key findings we had of this year's pavement management report. This year we did not do a physical survey. Instead, we applied typical decay curves for streets in our system, and that's what we used to calculate the system-wide average PCI, pavement condition index. So I want to just highlight a few of the issues that were identified this year. First, just to quickly review, pavement management is a strategy that we use to protect the city's investment in pavements. Reconstructing all of the city's pavement would cost over $200 million, roughly $15,000 per capita. So it makes good sense for us to take care of an asset that expensive, and we get the best bang for the buck by keeping good pavements good for as long as possible. So taking care of existing pavements and keeping them good is a lot less expensive than rehabilitating poor pavement. Right now we have 74.9 miles of paved city street. That's what's included in the evaluation. There are 2.5 miles of city streets that are either unpaved or undeveloped. And then there are 12.8 miles under the county and state jurisdiction for a total of just over 90 miles of street in the city. Over the last 20 years, the system has grown at about an average of between 1 and 1.5% per year. This is really the heart of the pavement management system, is the pavement condition index. Our target is between 65 and 75, which reflects the industry standard of target of maintaining PCIs at around 70. The first year we did a system-wide survey in 1996, it resulted in a PCI of 72. There were a few years between the first and second one. During that period of time, we were building streets very quickly. And so the second one that we conducted in 2004, we found the PCI had increased to 77, reflecting quite a few of those new roads that we had put into the system. In 2007 and 2011, we saw the marked decrease of the PCI. We're attributing that primarily to economic constraints and a significant reduction in the workforce during that period of time. And in 2008, we began to focus on seal coating streets, and we did that for several years, which we believe was attributed, which the 2014 PCI going back up to 71 is attributed a lot to that work and the prep work to get the street seal coated. The last few that we've done, 17 and 20, actually were identical numbers, and that's really the goal of pavement management, is to keep that number steady and stable. Moving into the next few years, we're hoping to kind of ride the top of that target range of 65 to 75. We realize that funds for capital projects and maintenance efforts are limited, and even those that are used in capital and maintenance, sometimes that spending does not impact the PCI of a street. Examples of that would be spending for utilities or streetlights or trees, trails, sidewalks, etc. You know, all of those things are critical parts of, important parts of various projects and maintenance efforts, but they don't raise PCI scores. Using the goal to maintain our PCI of around 70, each year we generate 3 budgets. One that keeps the PCI at its current level, one that increases it 10%, and one that decreases at 10%. And by doing that, we look out over a 20-year period and select the most cost-effective projects for a 5-year period. And typically the projects that end up on all 3 lists represent the best economic value and the best possible impact, positive impact on PCI. Those are projects that you'll see show up on our capital improvement plan or on our maintenance schedules. So the first 4 alternatives are make up the vast majority of capital improvement projects related to streets. And partial reconstruction is actually the alternative that has been most used over the last 10 years, followed by new and reconstruct projects. So the last 5 make up the vast majority of maintenance efforts, and the most common is crack repair, followed by replace sealant and seal coat fog seal. Now you might notice those are the cheapest of the 3, right? So obviously this shows that keeping good pavements good is a lot less expensive than waiting and rehabilitating pavements that are in poor condition. One of the things we took a look at this year was the costs and the price increases that we've been seeing recently for both capital and maintenance projects. Most of those cost increases can be attributed to oil prices, which affect bituminous costs and fuel costs. Materials cost and availability. Availability is actually probably the bigger issue. And then labor shortages in that industry, particularly trucking. And also this year, there were a few more projects selected than we've historically had. That's necessary to maintain our PCIs. So that resulted in a budget of projects for the next 5-year period, resulted in average annual costs of a little over 3.9 million. And we show for the first time in some time, a fairly significant shortfall of $500,000. Again, this is one of the first reports we've seen in some time that has had a pretty significant shortfall, so we're going to watch and see what that number does. But we are even now working to review construction specifications to consider the use of new techniques and new materials in the hopes of covering some of that shortfall. One of the efforts is to bid our major projects early in order and with the hopes of getting as many bids as possible, very competitive bids that way. So that's one example, like of a 2022 pavement management program will be bid out here shortly.
And I will note too, that we are looking at things like assessments and the rates that we're charging residents, because that haven't been touched in.
It's been a long time. Yeah. As far as the streets that were selected for maintenance efforts over the next 5 years resulted in an average annual maintenance cost of $423,000, with a much smaller shortfall of $23,000. Again, we'll do what we can with that, and we'll see where that number looks like over the next couple of years to see if that's going to be a long-term trend of a shortfall or if it's short term. By taking a look at the different kinds of projects that we've done over the last 10 years, again, we find that partial reconstruction is our primary alternative, and new and reconstruction is just right behind it, with the other two lagging behind a little bit. And we use this information to calculate the equivalent years between major projects on a particular roadway. Right now, significant capital improvement every 43 years is where our number is. Up slightly, but not dramatically. Same thing on the maintenance side. By taking a look at the different kinds of maintenance efforts that we've undertaken over the last 10 years, we see here that crack repair and sealing is the highest, followed close behind by seal coat and fog seals, with patching and maintenance overlays lagging behind. Most of that number of the 95,000 square yards of patching and maintenance overlays was actually done in the last couple of years in reaction to the information that we're seeing, indicating that we should look at more maintenance overlays in the forthcoming years. So recent examples of maintenance overlays that we've done are School Road, South Grade Road between School Road and Dale Street by the middle school. We did Stephen Street, Neal Avenue, Craig and Laura west of the Recreation Center. Merrill Street, we just tacked on to all the way up to 4th Avenue. Harrington, Arizona, and Carolina are also ones that we have done recently. We anticipate over time that we'll see that seal coat fog seal number go down and the patching maintenance overlays number to go up. And looking at our equivalent life cycle, we touch the street with some maintenance effort roughly every 10 years. So, last but certainly not least is frost damage, that can cause a significant challenge to maintain PCIs. From time to time, it seems, especially after a particularly severe winter that follows a wetter than average fall, we've experienced some frost damage. The last winter we had that issue was in 2019, where we incurred an additional $164,000 in damage to repair frost damaged streets. A few years before that, it was significantly more. It was at least twice, if not closer to 3 times more that we had in frost damage. So that's something that we always keep an eye on, and we're hoping that this winter will be not one of those where we end up with a lot of frost damage. That's just a brief summary of the report. There's all kinds of graphs and tables and pictures and everything else in the one that was sent to you. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I left my contact information up on the screen for those in the audience or those at home who may have some questions about pavement management. So.
No, did a good job, John. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
the information.
Yep, very good.
Thank you. Next is review of the 2021 compensation study.
Mayor, Council, you guys are gonna love us tonight because we're talking a lot about numbers and money and all those fun things, right? So, give me just a second here. All right, Mayor, Council, thanks for the opportunity. Hopefully you guys had some time over the weekend to review the 2021 Compensation Program Review Report. This was a follow-up from our 2016 study that we did. The one we did in 2016 was the first one the city had done in 11 years. And at that point, we had made a commitment that instead of waiting 10, 11, 15 years, that we were going to revisit this and review our compensation plan every 5 years. And so 2021 is obviously the 5th year since our 2016. It wasn't as intensive as we did in 2016, and mainly just because it was still relatively new. And so it was a little bit scaled back. You know, I think the main goal of it was just to confirm the city's competitive position within our compensation program relative to the market. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time kind of going through the report that was given to us from our consultant. And I guess before I do that, I do want to kind of highlight just what our policy or what our desire is when it comes to compensation and paying our employees. And I noted in the memo I gave the council, but I just wanted to highlight it here before I kind of dive into the report. One is that we want to establish and maintain a compensation plan that enables the city of Hutchinson to be highly competitive within our defined market. And we'll highlight what our defined market is. We've noted that we want to lead or exceed the market in attracting and retaining qualified, reliable, and motivated employees who are committed to quality and excellence for those that we serve. 3, that we want to ensure, subject to the financial condition of the city, that employees receive fair and equitable compensation in relation to their individual contributions to the city's success. 4, we want to follow principles of pay equity, which is obviously a state law, in establishing and maintaining pay relationships among positions based on the categories of a Keystone Point Factor system. We want to ensure program flexibility necessary to meet changing economic, competitive, technological, and regulatory conditions encountered by the city. And then lastly, we want to be able to balance compensation and benefit needs with available resources of the city. And so I think the study's done a good job of doing that. A couple of things just to keep in mind is that there's really 2 aspects that go into this. I think sometimes we lose the second aspect. The first is the market. How are we paying our employees compared to the market? And then second is internal. internally, how are we lining up amongst the various different positions. Each one of our positions here at the city is graded, assigned a set of points, then put in a system. That's what helps us compete with pay equity. And so jobs aren't evaluated in isolation of the remaining jobs within the city. The relative relationship amongst all the jobs within the city affects the final job grade. This is important for the city to maintain compliance with the state pay equity requirements. And then the final job grade is determined by the combination of internal job evaluation and the market at the same time. That's part of the reason that we hire a consultant, because they're way smarter at doing that than myself or Brenda are. And then a statistical regression line is used to develop a policy trend line for the overall pay program of the city. I think that's important. This is really a policy that comes in front of the council really every December. And this is a little bit more in-depth look at this. So that's part of that job calibration that takes place when we do our study. Like I said, this was the update from 5 years ago. We reviewed roughly 32 jobs, which is about 50% of the positions that we have here at the city, and that represents roughly 59% of all of our employees. Now, 5 years ago, we did 90% and 88%. Like I said, that was a more comprehensive view, but we did take the 32 probably most populated jobs that we have here, the ones that are the easiest to take a look at within the market. So with that, I'll kind of dive into some of the bullet points, and some of this I just touched on, with the goal is to confirm the competitive position of our program relative to the market. We also did allow directors to, if they wanted to, if they felt there were some jobs that had some significant changes, that we would review those positions, and we had 20 requests from the directors. So that's 20. It's about 25% of our employment, and that was done within this report. And like we noted, there was 32 jobs that were benchmarked. I'll come back to this a little bit later, but I think the one thing to note, and this is based off the general market conditions, so this doesn't have anything to do with necessarily the cities that we looked at. This is just overall general market. You can kind of see what those percentages are looking at for increases, mainly the public administration over the last couple of years. And what I want to point out is that when you look at this, and this will get back into some of the recommendations that come in later, you'll see that, let's go back to 2017, there was a 2.7%, 18 was 2.7, 19 was 3.2, 20 was 3.2, 2021 was 2.5, and they're projecting that for next year it's going to be a 3% growth within the public sector. Now, over that time period, we were giving 2% adjustments to the grid. And so when we see how we're behind the market a little bit, I think that's one of the things to keep in mind. As we noted, the 32 jobs, the 59 employees, like so roughly about 50 to 55% of the study was evaluated. I guess some of the good things, or some things to point out, are the key observations from the study. The city is administering in our current compensation program at 104% of the range midpoint, versus 101% of which we identified in 2016. And the midpoint is an important thing to keep in mind. That is what we use to judge the market. We use our midpoints. That's 100% of our pay scale. Remember, our scale goes from 80 to 120%, with 100% being the market. And so that is what we look at when we're evaluating our jobs and the compensation. We found out the city's pay level is 100% of market. However, actual pay ratio for jobs in grades 170 and higher is 105%, compared to 94.2% for jobs in grades 160 and lower. And so the question is, okay, are we doing something wrong? And the quick answer is no. Our highest turnover rate has been in the positions of 100 to 170. And so those are our newer positions. So they're more likely going to be starting lower in the pay scale, around that 80 to 85%. Our 170 and higher, those are our most seasoned positions here at the city. And so you're just seeing that they've been here longer, they've made their progression up our pay scale, and so that's really what that study is identifying. When I looked at the market, they identified that our salary arrangements points are at 96% of the market mean, indicating that we're lagging the market by 4%. I think we were at about 2.5% when we did our study back in 2016. What we're actually paying our employees is at roughly about 104%. So that I think that shows you where a lot of our progression has gone with our staff. And once again, that highlights those that are over the 170 grade compared to those that are 160 and lower. So what's being recommended for the 2022 salary structure incorporates that 4% market adjustment of where they've identified that we're 4% behind. And then they've recommended that we add another 3% on in 2022 to account for the shift in the market that they're seeing within the public sector. And so their recommendation is a total adjustment from 2021 to 2022 of 7%. Now, before everyone gets scared and worried, that doesn't mean that every single one of our employees is to get a 7% increase. What that means is that our pay grid, the earning potential, is to shift 7%. I think some of the news that you've heard in recent weeks, this probably isn't going to be too surprising. I know, was it Medicaid, not Medicaid, but Social Security went up 6.9% from 2021 or is going up 6.9%. The state just released their salary cap, which is based off of market data for public employees. That's going up 6.2% in 2022, and so we're seeing a lot of those shifts in the pay scale. And I think some of what we experienced this past year, especially in our part-time seasonal, played out in that as well. And so when you look at the proposed salary structure, on your left is what's currently in place for 2021. On your right is what's being recommended. That incorporates the adjustment of 4% for the lacking that we are in the market, along with the additional 3% of what they're projecting that the market will move in 22. Years past, like I said, up to this year, we've been shifting that grid by 2%. So this is, obviously a jump from what we've done previously. Yeah, just obviously a couple highlights of that 4% below the market, and the note of the 3% adjustment. And these are just some of the graphs, and I don't want to necessarily bore people with this, but I think this identifies those red dots are the market and the market mean, and the blue dots are different positions and where we're at in comparison to the market. Basically, that's showing that 4% gap. There's always going to be outliers. We notice it mainly in, I think, that 220 position. But there's always going to be somebody who's going to lead the market in the area or not. One thing to keep in mind, though, once again, this is taking into account the market and then our internal equity. And you have to do them both at the same time. This is just, I think this does a good relation of kind of the market to our actual pay with what we're seeing where our employees at. And that's the important thing to keep in mind. Just because there's a recommendation to move the grid 7% doesn't mean everyone's getting a 7% increase. You may recall we still have a performance-based pay system, so you still have to earn your pay increase as an employee. Now, if you happen to be below the minimum, when the grid gets moved up, you would see an increase at that time, or if you happen to be one of the employees who had a shift in your grading system, you would notice an immediate change as well. Otherwise, it's still going to be based off of performance. The grid, moving of the grid is just basically shifting the earning potential of the employees. So that's kind of a summary of the report. I want to highlight, just because we noted, this is the market that we compare ourselves to. There was 2 changes from 2016 to 2021. That was the removal of Hastings and City of Champlin, and then we replaced them with Monticello and Buffalo. And we just thought those were a little bit more kind of West Metro, closer to our competition. But this is what we've identified kind of as our peer group, those that we are competing against for talent here at the city. And we've had that list be fairly consistent for at least the last 10 years. There's maybe been, a town or an area that's been added or dropped, but for the most part, that's been the core area that we've looked at for just a peer group comparison. These are the recommended changes to the position classification table. And I think as the report noted, there was 20 positions looked at. Those are all the ones that were identified, that are highlighted, that were reviewed. 4 of them increased by 1 grade. There was a recommendation that 2 decrease. There was 1 that was new, a new review to our system, and then we had 13 jobs that remained unchanged. I think the biggest thing, and I forgot to mention it, the proposed changes to the pay grid or to our pay system would have an estimated cost to the city of about $146,000. We'll touch on this a little bit later. That's been incorporated into the 2022 budget and what we'll be talking about after this presentation. I think the biggest impact that we saw, and I don't think it was a huge surprise to a lot of us, was the impact that it was going to have on our seasonal temporary pay grid system. That's our summer help. This was the system that was in place in 2021. You notice the 12 different steps. Really, it was starting at $11 an hour, up to 27. I know I had a couple of texts from council members going, how are we going to hire any lifeguards when we're paying $11.50 an hour? And that was not only a challenge in the pool, but we saw the same challenge in the public works and in the parks with hiring our part-time seasonal. And so this was the plan that was put in place in 2021. This is what's being recommended that we move to in 2022. And I guess some of the more significant changes to that plan is, and I'm just looking at my notes here, it's recommended that we add some of our regular part-timers that was on our old plan into this. They noted that our current schedule has way too many levels and steps and not sufficient or meaningful progression within each of them, so they kind of more or less condensed that. And so they're recommending that we go with something with this, which is, there are significant increases in the proposed wages within our part-time, seasonal, and temporary. And based off of, I think, what we're seeing within the local market, whether it's Quick Trip or Walmart, where they're starting people at $15 to $18 to $20 an hour, we recognize that we had to make a significant shift in how we're paying our part-timers. And I think the market data came back to show that. So when we talk about that 146,000, roughly, I think 77 to 80,000 is right here within our part-time seasonal pay. It is making those adjustments to help both in recruitment and the placement with our staff. I think that's everything touched on. So I know there's a lot of information, a lot more in your council packet. So we're not asking for any answers tonight, but I guess I want to open up for any questions, comments. Our intention right now is to bring these recommendations forward for council action. That would be what we annually approve a compensation system plan and a pay scale that's usually done in December. And so it would be our intentions to bring what was recommended forward to the council in December. But I want to use this opportunity to answer any questions that you may have.
The seasonal one looks a lot better because I was one of those councilmen texting you and harassing. But I would say it's not even high, if anything. Like it's a little still like we're more in line with things now. But hiring part-time people is a disaster right now. So hopefully this will help with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're not, and I don't know if we necessarily want to be over the market within within our local business community. But I would say it puts us at least competitive with our local market.
Like obviously like lifeguards was a tough one. Like has it been a big problem across the entire organization for part-timers.
Well, you had John and Lynn. I think from what I heard this summer, it was across the board struggle to get part-time and seasonal.
Right.
I mean, John and Lynn, you guys have the two largest set of employees, if you guys want to chime in at all. So.
I would say throughout for all of our seasonal employees, it was hard. I know given the adjustments that were made, that was really helpful, and then the ability to kind of go within that range a little bit and give someone a little bit more experience was helpful. But just, yeah, they can jump ship really fast to go somewhere else for a couple, like 50 cents to $1 more. So the retaining of employees was really, really helpful for us.
Well, the neighboring towns had trouble even opening their pools and stuff because they couldn't find.
We have a
What?
big advantage, because our aquatic center manager is also the American Red Cross trainer. So we can offer jobs to 15-year-olds to be lifeguards and we train them in-house. Yeah, so on the low end, it works pretty well, but to retain them, that's where this comes in. Once they've been there a couple of years, you want to keep them as they get more.
What is the average wage for a lifeguard?
That we were paying this past year,
Yes,
we were paying probably $12 an hour on average.
okay, and what is,
And this will go to closer to that $14 to $15 an hour range.
right,
There's a lot of communities that jump theirs up right away.
yeah, I mean, we probably should have done that.
Well, we did, we adjusted
It
them by, I
wasn't-
think about, so we were at like $10 an hour.
Right, we did what? We did $1 raise or something.
Yeah, we did a
like
dollar raise, which was beneficial, but it was still nowhere
that.
near.
In comparison to other pools,
Mm-hmm.
you know, other towns that are like our size, were we way under wage? Do you know?
It's hard. I had a study of a different, like neighboring communities and other ones out there. You know, a lot of them were in line or a little bit more. We were not on the high end by any means. But there was a lot of communities that I think did adjustments this past summer. They had started their pay system in the spring, and then they made also adjustments to retain people as well too, or to get people to come back again. The year of the shutdown really hurt a lot of aquatic centers as well, because lifeguards went and found different jobs. So the 2020 shutdown, a lot of pools were not open, so they went and found different jobs, and then to get them back was really difficult. So I would say we're not more, we don't pay more than most. We're probably right in line with a lot, but a lot were shifted this year.
Well, I look at those amounts and I think a lifeguard deserves every penny. They're taking care of our children, our grandmothers, whoever's in that pool. I mean,
Well, and I would even note too, I think the one thing that always gets lost, both in the public works and in the park side, are the ones who take care of our parks and our streets during the summer months that we kind of forget about because it's not snow. We're paying them probably $12 to $15 an hour,
And they
and now this
deserve
is
more,
moving them
too.
in that $16 to $18 an hour. I mean, we were struggling just because we were well behind, specifically even what the private sector was paying those type of.
so this has been long overdue. We need to,
Yeah, you know, one of the things we talked about is that we've, over the years, we've always taken a look at our full-time and we've made adjustments year in and year out, and we've just kind of let the seasonal go. I don't think we can, especially in the current market, I don't think we can keep doing that. I think that's something we're gonna have to spend a little bit more time probably adjusting, because we were, I mean, you know, roughly an $80,000 impact isn't something we wanna do on a regular basis when it comes to our part-time seasonal pay. So,
Well, we're always in between a rock and a hard spot because, you know, everybody complains about, well, our taxes are too high, but they expect the services. So like Matt usually said, and we have this conversation quite often, you know, okay, you want us to cut taxes, what service do you want us to cut? And they don't want anything cut, but
no.
so, I mean, that, we have to, you know, keep the people around so we do have our, everything opened and clean and everything, like Matt said, that people forget about the people that mow the grass and pick up the garbage and everything else, and, you know, everybody comments about how clean our town is, and that's because of these people. So we need to,
you know, and I'll give obviously kudos to staff too, because I think we've been innovative over the years. I mean, we've averaged, roughly a 2% tax increase in the last 7 years. And so we've made adjustments. We've been able to work with what we have, too. So it's, I think we can't lose the fact that, we've got great staff here that makes, that uses what they have and it makes it work for us as a community. So, like I said, this will come back in front of you in December, but just wanted to provide an opportunity to at least present this to you and see if there's any questions or comments. So, and if not, like I said, we're going from money to money. So, we have our truth and taxation hearing coming up in 3 weeks, I think, November 7th. And so, one of the things that I wanted to be able to do, I usually try to do before we enter into the truth and taxation hearing, is just to kind of do one last budget update with the council on where we're at, what staff is planning on bringing to the truth and taxation hearing. So you guys at least give you an opportunity to ask any question, provide any direction before we get to that public hearing point, if you'd like to see anything changed or updated. And so this is kind of that update. This was our approved levies in September. This was our preliminary levy. We were looking at a 7% preliminary tax levy increase, and we noted the most significant impact had to do with the debt funds and that 16.2% increase, and that was in regards to the debt that we were going to be taking on with the building of the new police station. A couple things to highlight with that new police station. We also cut roughly, $200,000 in expenses when we eliminated the dispatch center. We had $3 million that we allocated from our hospital funds to pay for the police station, but we have to remember that's a $13 to $15 million project that we're building, because we also are moving the DMV to that location as well. Over, I guess, the last month and a half, 2 months, just with conversations Andy and I always do, usually in November, we do one-on-one meetings with directors where we kind of go line item by line item with budgets, and just to kind of make sure that we're comfortable with kind of where everything's at. And so we've had some minor changes to the general fund. We've actually had a slight uptick in some of the revenue that we're projecting, which actually includes a minor decrease in the property tax line item. And then you can see the adjustments that we've made to the wages and benefits from September to November. This gets into a little bit more detail on some of those budget impacts. You'll note there that wage study that's at 146, there's that breakdown of that. Like I said, I noted that 78,000 for that seasonal pay adjustment. We've had a couple employees that will be moving up in the grid, and the financial impact that will have, and then that shift. We had in our preliminary budget a 2% shift. The current budget takes into account that 7% shift in the pay grid that's come from the recommendation of the wage study. When we were in September, we were assuming a 0% increase in our health insurance, and we ended up finding out that our health insurance rate were going to be decreased by 5%. And so that's been factored into, along with some just additional, there's a new arrangement between engineering and HRA to share one of that positions. We've got some changes going on at the event center, and just some miscellaneous adjustments, along with a couple other changes that kind of resulted in some minor impacts to the general fund budget. So what we're planning to bring forth through the truth and taxation hearing is a 4.4% tax levy increase, and so that's down from 7%. So we've reduced the tax levy by roughly $209,000 from September, with the majority of that coming in from the debt funds. And we'll touch on that here just a little bit. There's still a couple things that we're waiting on. I think we're still waiting for open enrollment. There might be some insurance that might have some impacts. I know the EDA, I think, is looking at potentially adjusting their levy too as well. So you might see a couple minor changes. I would say it's not going to be anything that's significant, but at this point, this is what staff is planning on bringing forth to the public hearing on December 7th is, like I said, a 4.4% tax levy increase, which is a 2.6% decrease from September, which is, like I said, the equivalent of $209,000. What that impact looks like, and that's kind of that area in blue. The September option is the far right. That's the 7% that we were bringing, and we noted that, depending on what your value looks like, and I got mine today, and it went up a lot more than this. The city portion was about $62 based off of that value. And so we almost cut that in half of what the city impact would be with the changing of the proposed tax levy from September to what we're looking at for our public hearing in a couple weeks. We're still seeing a reduction in our tax rate. Obviously, this change has a little bit more significant reduction in that tax rate, which has stayed consistent with where we've been at over the last couple of years. Once again, that's showing that the growth within the community is outpacing the level of spending that we're seeing here at the city. We shared this a little bit at our last budget meeting, but the biggest change that is driving down that tax levy is what we projected for our debt tax levy. And this is what it looked like in September. You're seeing the significant increase from 2021 to 2022. This takes into account the new police station. What we're proposing is to kind of lower that curve, if you want to say a little bit, the first year of that debt. And we're proposing that we would essentially buy down that debt with reserves to the tune of about $1 million. And I'll highlight some of those areas that we could potentially look at to do that. The September debt plan assumes structuring the 2022 police facility debt with larger principal payment in the early years, essentially replacing the principal payments on existing debt the city paid off this past August. The benefit of this structure is lower debt levies in the later years of the debt plan. The negative is obviously was the significant increase in our 2022 debt levy and the overall tax levy increase. So part of what we're planning that we can do is structure that final 2022 debt to place less principal repayments in the first few years, which will soften the increase in the debt levy and the overall tax increase. But we're going to spread that out over the life of the debt. Correct, Andy? Correct. So we can also, as we know, use additional cash reserves to buy down the new police facility debt. Options include the community improvement fund, our general fund reserves, our capital projects funds, and even potentially the ARPA funds that we received. The updated debt levy, the one that we're planning to bring to our public hearing, includes restructuring the debt as we showed here, and also assumes that we're using $1 million of city reserves to lessen that debt burden with the new police debt. The proceeds from the sale of the existing police facility and EOC can be used to further reduce future debt levies by replacing those proceeds in our debt service fund. This hasn't been factored in the debt plan at this point. Any impact will likely not affect the levy years current until 2023. So as we look at some of our fund balance, I just wanted to kind of highlight where we're at, just to give you an idea in case you maybe have some concerns about using fund balances to buy down that debt. This is what our general fund looked like at the end of 2020. We had a 59.6% fund balance percentage. We have roughly, our policy plan says we need at least 40% for working capital on a year out basis. Remember, we only get paid twice a year. That's in June and November, December. So we have to have that working capital, make it through those months when we're not getting paid. That leaves roughly 2.4 of undesignated fund balance that we've identified that the council can use at their discretion within our general fund. That 59% has, I think at one point we were at about 61, 62%. Just for historical purposes, we dipped into that to help build the aquatic center. Mm-hmm. And so that went from, I think, about 61% down to 54%. And over the last couple of years, that's steadily gone up to 59.6%. So if you were to take $1 million out of the general fund, it's still going to leave you with about a 52% general fund balance, still above our 40% target. And then we also have some of our special project funds out there. Right now we have an unreserved balance of $2.3 million within our community improvement fund. One thing to keep in mind is that it's our intention to tap into this for the splash pad. And then we've also got $1.8 million that's not reserved within our capital projects funds. So we've got plenty of money, if you want to say, in reserves that we could tap in to help buy down that debt. I think that's probably a question for all of us, whether it's city finances or personal finances, is how much do you want to tap into reserves to help pay for something. But that's what's currently being planned. That's what we're planning to present, like I said, at the Truth and Taxation hearing on December 7th. And this is just, once again, kind of just a summary of what that impact would look like. This is what the preliminary was in September. This is what we're planning on bringing forth through the Truth and Taxation hearing on December 7th. So with that, any questions, comments, anything else you'd like to see potentially changed before we get to our public hearing on December 7th?
That proposed levy looks a lot better. So
It's good to hear. Any concerns with using reserves?
no.
It's been done before, as you said, with like the pool.
And I would argue, what's the point of our reserves?
Right.
I mean, obviously, you want to protect yourself for those down years, for those natural disasters, for economic downturn, all the things that we've identified within our financial management plan. But I think, we wouldn't be presenting this as staff if we weren't comfortable with that recommendation. Anything to add I maybe didn't touch on?
Well, this is all assuming a $13 million police facility, and if costs go up, then we could be looking at using more reserves next year as well. So we'll have that conversation when we really have a good handle on what the final costs are gonna be of that.
Anything else?
I'm actually backing up, but in the pay compensation, and forgive me if I misread, but is it basically a 7% increase across the board through all pay levels?
Correct. I
just want to clarify that.
think the best thing to look at is that you take your grid and you shift it 7%. So some of that plays into effect with pay equity. And that's, I think, the important thing that we need to remember. And so it's tough just to go, okay, well, these 4 classes we're going to move up, these ones we're going to keep the same, these ones we're going to adjust downwards, because then that has an impact on, first off, your pay equity plan, and then eventually it'll come back to...
There'll have to be an adjustment.
Yeah, so for the most part, what that does is increase the earning potential of every employee by 7%. Like I said, that's not a automatic. A lot of times, the paper, saying again for the paper, our employees aren't getting a 7% increase across the board. Most likely they'll be, as we are in a typical year, anywhere from 2 to 4% based on performance, just that the pay grid earning potential has now gone up. So.
Anything else?
All right, thanks.
Thanks, man. We have no unfinished business, new business, first reading of ordinance number 21-827, ordinance authorizing sale of municipal owned land to Hutch Uptown Commons LLC.
Mayor and Council, this is I believe it's the Franklin House that we referred to, that the city purchased a few years back. This is a part of the plan with the new development that's looking to take place around the old medical clinic site. This is the intentions of the developer to develop this area into additional housing. And so this is the yes, the first step in looking to complete the sale of that property to that developer. Just a reminder, everyone of anytime we look to sell property, we require two readings of an ordinance, so we'd have a second reading at your next meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Pat to approve first reading. Any other discussion?
Is there any word on the building being moved?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Working on it.
Not yet, so.
All right, call a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have advertisement for bids for the Birch Arena roof and wall upgrades, East Rink.
Marv, or, oh, you're giving it to Pete, huh?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Been working with Marvin Lynn to put the
Just
package
introduce
together.
yourself again for at least the public anyways, so.
What's that?
Maybe introduce yourself again for the
Oh,
public.
Pete
so-
Philippic, Integrity Group Construction Manager, working on the PD and helping with the Birch Ice Arena project. Been working over the past month to package up the plans that were done last year from ISG, update those, and we're ready to send those out for bid. Our plan in place is to hit the newspaper tomorrow with our first advertisement based on your approval tonight. Looking to receive bids December 23rd, at which point we'll go ahead and through the qualification process and try to bring those bids back the first part of January. Very similar to what did at the rec center, new roof, new wall panels with a brick veneer on the lower portions for some durability and damage control. And at the same time, new liner panel insulation throughout. So alongside that, I do know that the city is working with an engineer to upgrade some mechanical in the ice arena that will coordinate and work alongside. So basically, we're here to ask approval to seek the bids. We've only got two basic packages we're sending out. One is a general construction package, which will have most of the metals, the insulated panels, the roofing, and then we're also sending out the masonry thin brick veneer system separate. At the same time, we are going to go out and get quotes on two other packages since they're smaller in nature. One would be the garage door. This would allow the city to hit a couple local vendors and keep the service local future on that, and the other is the interior painting. So with that, I'll address any questions Councilor Mayor has.
You said brick veneer, not block, like what's there now, or?
Basically, what's going to happen, the exterior wall panels are very similar to what's at the rec center. They're pre-insulated wall panels. They'll be put on the outside. In order to put a veneer on that, it needs to be a thin brick in order to attach to that metal panel girt system. So that's what will go in place.
That's similar to what they did with the rec center, Jimmy? Yeah.
Yep, like Pete said, it's nearly the same. We've learned a few things with that project. We're gonna apply them to the next one. Even better.
And just for the mayor and council, this was actually originally in our capital improvement plan to take place last year, but with some of the street work going on, we did the parking lot, or I should say this year, we did the parking lot, and we moved this project to 2022. And so this has been in our CIP for quite some time.
So is your crystal ball gonna keep those prices down, or?
You know, we're going to do our best on it. That budget was kind of put together last year through ISG. As everybody knows, with the inflation that's out there with the metals, it's really hit hard. At the same time, the reason we are pushing this out this early is the fact that we only have a certain window next summer to get this work done, ice being out before ice goes back in. And right now, we're pushing up against the fence of actually getting some of this material on site by the time summer comes, believe it or not. So there's definitely still challenges in the materials market.
Marv, can't the hockey players go to outside rink again?
I don't think so.
I think the hockey players can, but the spectators can't. All right, any other questions for Pete? Mark?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Advertising for bids. Second?
All right, motion by Mary, second by Pat to approve, for advertisement for bids for Birch Arena. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Say,
Thank you
Mayor,
very much.
with having Pete, once you step here, with having Pete here, I wanted him to give an update at least on the police station, and some of you guys have kind of got my weekly updates on the soils, and I thought it'd be better to hear from the professional on what we're now experiencing in our wonderful project that's right on time, so.
Well, I don't know about professional, but we'll do the best we can tonight. Just a little bit of update on the police facility, Liquor Hutch. If you've driven by there as of late, we've got the old Econo Foods tore down. One of her first orders of business was to put the demising wall or the new exterior wall up on the Liquor Hutch. So we went ahead about a month and a half ago and started digging footings. We found black organics in the footings excavation. The trouble with organics is over time it decays, you can't have it in, it's intermixed. So they put a system in, or we actually started installing today, it's called the Helical piling system, basically getting prep. It's basically like drilling big auger bits into the soil to a certain torque reading to help substantiate the soil around it and support the footing so we can go ahead and build a wall. It's a pretty specialized method to support footings, and Braun Intertech put a design forth, and so we're in the process of doing that. At the same time, last week, Monday, we started digging test pits out on the footprint of the police facility, which was basically the area that was underneath the Econo Foods. Any of the soil borings we had done previous outside the building line shown different stratas of dirt separated by layers of organics, which we thought we'd be able to use a lot of this dirt, reuse it. What we found underneath the Econo Foods building is a mixture of organics, debris, basically soil that's unsuitable to be used. Braun Intertech's been on site. They went ahead and potholed another 6 test pits yesterday. There was a few test pits that had some chemical odors to it. They sent that off for testing. If you look at the history of that site, there's been a lot of activity over the years. Pretty neat to read, but not good for the soil below. So we're kind of waiting to hear back from them on where this soil ends up. Either it goes to a registered landfill or it can just be disposed of in a normal pit. At the same time, we were going to end up doing quite a bit of soil corrections on the footprint of that building in order to bring this up to standards to build the building on. So we'll be working on that with some pricing with the excavation contractor. My hopes are we get about a month and a half of weather like we had today here and life will be good, but we're also planning for what we normally see this time of year. So we're doing the best we can with what we're at. We have gotten a little bit late start with working through some of those plan review comments with our design professionals, but I think we're over the hump on that side. So looking forward to a mild winter and actually seeing some good news and turning this project around and moving forward with it. So quick update on where we're at.
You're talking about just digging deeper and taking more of the base out and putting something more substantial in there?
Yeah, basically what we have is if you took a look at a child sandbox with a bunch of black dirt mixed in it, that's what we got underneath your building currently, and we need to turn it into a new sandbox before we start building.
How long, sorry. How long before you get those soil samples back that you know that you just...
I talked to Braun Intertech this morning, and they sent it off for a rush test. Like I said, they took 4 last week, and they took an additional 6 yesterday, and they're hoping by next Wednesday to have a report back to us. So.
We'll expect you to report back to us.
Well, I'm hoping for the best. Like I said, they smelled some odors, I think, on 3 now of the 10, so 30% of it. So we're going to hopefully be under the threshold needed to do anything specialized with it, and hopefully we can just haul it out to a regular pit in exchange for new engineered fill.
For those with hair the same color as mine, I had an uncle that ran a shell bulk plant down there years ago.
They always forewarn you about redevelopment sites, and I think we're experiencing some of that.
So,
Well, we kind of knew that. I mean, look what's all been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. For those of us that have been around a while, we know what's all been done there.
Do we have to let the EPA know about any of this stuff, or is that a no?
Not on the air, Pat.
Anything else for Pete?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Alrighty, governance, we have the City of Hutchinson financial report and investment report for October of 2021. Lynn, do you have anything else for us tonight?
No.
Marv?
No, I got enough.
John?
Where's that group?
Just a reminder that the residential leaf program is done. We are not picking leaves up anymore. We will be doing some cleanup in the downtown area early tomorrow morning to tidy up everything that it's a challenge to get downtown quite often because of the vehicles and park. But so we'll do that early this coming morning. So.
Well, as long as you're out, you could go right on.
Yeah, and I know we have a few, and we picked up a few of them Monday and also today when we were out, but
Seen a few on Main Street.
yeah, and what we'll do next week is we'll do some notifying of that people need to clean that up, so. All right.
I was out on my street today sweeping away.
Yeah, yes, it was a really strange year in this business. That little bit of wet weather we had towards the end of the summer kind of jump-started everything, and took a long time for a lot of the leaves to fall down. And our total, what we hauled to Creekside as far as tons was not much different than what it was last year. And last year was a 2.5 week year, but it just tells you what the impact that the dry weather has on the leaves. Certainly wasn't as many leaves as there are in a typical year either because of dry weather earlier this year. A lot of the trees went dormant just like the grasses did, so.
Not on Jewel Road.
Or on Arch.
I beg to differ with this statement.
Thanks, John. Andy, you got anything for us tonight?
Nothing for me, please.
All right. Chief Jefferson.
Thanks.
I feel kind of special. I have two chiefs here tonight. This is.
Yeah. We make a good team. First order of business, just wanted to give you all an update. It's been a while now since we've had our dispatch consolidation, and I'm sure you received some questions or some comments, and I know I have as well. So maybe more for the public than it necessarily is for you, but just again giving you an update. Everything's been going relatively smoothly, or as smooth as we could expect to this point. Probably our chief complaint at this point from citizens is the calling tree that they've installed at the sheriff's office. So I guess in response to that, we do have a direct line that goes into the police department. Again, that's 234-4290. They can access that through our Facebook page or the website. But again, if you have records requests, anything like that, there's no need to go through the calling tree. You can just dial that direct number, goes directly into our office. If you need to speak with an officer, you can use that. We just ask that people, if you actually have a call for service, you still use the admin, our old admin line 2242, or if it's an emergency, obviously call 911. That's going to get you your quickest response. But yeah, other than that, everything's going pretty smoothly. The IT department was there removing a lot of the equipment last week, and so we've pretty much converted that space into an office space or a workspace for our records department now. So does anybody have any questions or any comments that you want regarding that, or something that I should know about that I'm not recognizing?
I actually used it this week. I had a rowdy couple of people in front of the bike shop that I called, and it worked just great. I got through the tree. Your officer showed up, calmed them down. Awesome. Mixed result.
All right, good to hear.
Yep.
Secondly, I was approached by Doug Hanneman, the former editor of The Leader, but he also now serves on the McLeod County Safe Roads Coalition. It's a program that's put together through the TZD, or Towards Zero Death, from the state. And he had just asked if I would talk a little bit today about speed, or basically just traffic crashes in the county and statewide. So rather than try to paraphrase what he told me, he prepared a statement, so I just would like to read that if you would allow me to do so. McLeod County had 3 tragic traffic crashes on Sunday, so this past Sunday, with a total of 9 people injured. 4 of these people sustained life-threatening injuries. Already this year, our county has seen 7 traffic fatalities. The average number of fatalities each year in our county is 2 or 3. We're working to get the word out, again, coming from the coalition, word out to encourage people to be more mindful of their driving. And so 5 easy things to do to drive safer, to protect your family and other people on the road. Obviously, number 1, if you've been drinking or are drowsy, don't drive. Number 2, don't drive distracted. Put the phone down, and I would say any other electronic device you might have in your hand, put that down as well. Stay alert and practice defensive driving. Wear your seatbelt. And then lastly, speed. Speed is becoming a major issue statewide. I don't know if you happen to catch it, but WCCO did a story within the last couple days about the excessive speed, what they call super speeders, statewide and actually nationwide right now. And a lot of not just super speeders, but people that are refusing to stop for the police when they're being stopped or asked to pull over. And so we're seeing not only in the county, but statewide and nationwide, more pursuits. And so I guess I would just ask, I know it's a big ask, but if you see the red lights behind you, maybe pull over instead of deciding to hit the accelerator. But again, it's just a huge danger to not only yourself, but everybody else on the road. As a matter of fact, one of the traffic crashes that's referenced in his statement was a direct result of someone that was fleeing from the police this weekend. So again, that's really all I have to say. Just drive safe, especially with the holidays coming up. Be ever mindful that even if you're doing your best, there may be somebody on the road that is making bad choices. So any questions regarding that?
With the super speeders, is that people that are going like 100 miles an hour?
In excess of 100.
Sure.
I mean, 2 things. First off, if you ever used to get if there was ever a pursuit, it was very unusual. Now it's very commonplace. 2 to 3 a day in the metro. And again, in a year, if we saw 1 out here, that was extraordinary. And now I think we've assisted the county. We haven't been directly involved in too many, but we've assisted the county, probably 7 or 8 of them this year.
Sure.
So it's just crazy. But yeah, the super speeders, that's in excess of 100, and that's commonplace a lot in the metro now.
Is it people street racing or just people?
No, it's people that think that they don't have to obey the law and they're driving 100 miles an hour down the freeway.
Sure.
I think that study said too, that it's people that maybe have a more severe charge against them that they don't want to stop for.
Yeah, so they referenced that. One of the interviews they did was with Colonel Langer from the State Patrol, and they talked about, and then there was also a study done at the U of M regarding the same thing. The U of M study shows that although there may be people that are apprehensive about stopping because they're afraid of the police, by far the majority of the reason they don't stop is because they either have another charge against them, they have warrants, or what they're being stopped for has nothing to do with the reason they're fleeing. It's what they've already done.
Sure.
And or maybe in the process of doing, I guess is probably the best way to put it.
Has accidents with wildlife gone up a lot lately, Tom? Have you heard anything?
No, I haven't heard anything like
just
that.
being out and about, Pat, you're out and about. Haven't you noticed there's been a lot more like deer?
Deer.
deer on the road?
Well, as a deer hunter, I can attest, they're not in the woods.
You can attest to that.
But I had better luck with your car?
Any questions or anything else?
One other thing, this is a little bit unrelated, but has there been any talk of the county doing anything with the 7 and 22 intersection, or MnDOT doing like, maybe doing like a 3-sided?
Out by Simonson's.
Yes, like doing like a
I'm sure there's been some discussions, but the person to answer that isn't sitting here today,
Sure.
so.
John, unless you know, John, do you know of anything?
Just in general for the northeast ring road,
Sure.
that will be part of that.
You just see a lot of people racing in that intersection to get onto the road, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
with everybody going 60 past it, you know, it's just kind of a T-bone waiting to happen. But
It has that.
It's a dangerous little area. I mean,
Well, it's kinda, it's a bad one when, especially you got that turn lane, so
Yep.
people don't understand that there can be a vehicle hiding behind the one that's turning. I think
Yeah.
that's where most of them come from, but.
Again, just need to drive defensively and be observant. That's probably the best advice.
All right,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
same to you?
Chief Schulman, do you have anything else for us?
I do that.
All righty. Mark?
All I have to say is have a great holiday. We have a lot to be thankful for.
Mary? Mary?
Well, first off, today the Hutchinson Community Foundation awarded grants, and they awarded $43,000 in grants. I mean, how wonderful is that? We are so fortunate to have a foundation like that in our city. So they need to be acknowledged for that. So thank you to them and all the participants who were there and got their grants. It was very nice, very appreciative. Also, it's Thanksgiving, so enjoy your families, drive safe, and just hug and love each other, because that's what it's all about. Be thankful for every day. Happy Turkey Day.
Same thing. Thanksgiving wishes and safety to everybody. It's Shop Local Saturday. Chad, you can probably allude to that a little more, but I think with all those ships sitting out in the bay, let them sit, buy some stuff in Hutch. I sure feel better about it when I do it.
Well, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Congrats to the girls swim team. There was a real dominating performance there. There's some really talented swimmers on that team. And then good luck to the football team on Friday. So they've looked pretty good lately, so hopefully they do all right. And like Pat said, Small Business Saturday, the chamber is putting on a big event downtown in the morning on Saturday.
Get your ping pong ball.
Yep. And then come down by bike or whatever you want. So. Or two. Or whatever. Or whatever you want to give people for Christmas, whatever. So, all right, have a great night.
Yeah.
Couple reminders, obviously city offices are closed Thursday and Friday for the Thanksgiving holiday. And then just another reminder that our Truth and Taxation hearing is Tuesday, December 7th at 6 p.m. In these council chambers. And, you know, I think that's the best opportunity for the public to hear about our budget and what's being planned for the upcoming year and where the tax dollars are being spent. So that's it for me.
All right. Mary's on the library board, and she approached me and asked, you know, we did put a non-resident on the airport commission. She was wondering if anybody would have any objections to having a non-resident be put on the library board.
Not for me.
It's fine with me.
And simply, we'd have to do an ordinance update our city code, because right now our city code says that they all need to be residents. We have some committees that
There are some.
specifically note resident, but the library board does, at least at this time, note that it needs to be residents of
Right.
Hutchinson. So we've changed it for other committees, and there are other committees who don't have necessarily that restriction on it. So we can look at drafting something here in
Okay.
upcoming meetings. So.
All right.
Thank you.
And the other things I had, Chad took care of them. The swim team, excellent representation of Hutch Tiger Sharks down at the state meet, and football team, good luck on Friday,
4:30.
4:30, right?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Yep, it's at 4.
And
Blue Tigers.
just happy Thanksgiving, and remember to be thankful for everything that we have. So with that,
Motion to close.
motion to adjourn?
Nope.
Nope.
Motion to close
Can't-
session.
we have- Yep, next item on the agenda is a closed session to develop or consider an offer of purchase of real estate identified as 145 Second Avenue Southeast and 205 Jefferson Street Southeast. I would now entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss the possible purchase of real estate identified as 145 Second Avenue Southeast and 205 Jefferson Southeast.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Pat, second by Mary, to go into closed session to discuss purchase of real estate. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Switch.
Cameras off. The city council has convened into a closed